Top quilts have some huge advantages. You save weight, you save bulk, they're more versatile as far as venting them if you have a warmer model, and you typically are gonna save a little bit of money on the price tag when you are acquiring one compared to a sleeping bag. But if you're like most people out there, you have some reservations for top quilts. There's talks of learning curves, there's talks of drafts and all these different things that might keep you from buying a top quilt. So in this video, we're gonna talk about tips and tricks to stay warm in your top quilt, as well as things to look for when you go to purchase your top quilt. But if you stay tuned clear to the end, we're also gonna be releasing a brand new product. So let's dive right in. Now, if you're new to the concept of top quilts, there is a video that we'll link up here that talks about the differences between top quilts and sleeping bags, but there are some big savings and advantages. So go check out that video if you're not familiar with top quilts. So let's cover a brief history lesson with top quilts. Top quilts actually started to get traction and get pioneered through hammock campers. So hammock campers were using underquilts, they started using top quilts, and that's really where the traction came on. Now they might have been used a little bit before that, but I wasn't a part of that, and that's really where the popularity came from. But people had these top quilts, and they started to want to use them on the ground for these weight savings or size savings. So they took these hammock top quilts, put them on the ground, and they realized, hey, we're getting drafts and different things like that. So they're like, well, let's just make them wider. So everyone made them wider so that you could sleep on the ground with them. But the problem was these top quilts were still designed for a hammock first. And because of that, it's created problems such as drafts, and staying warm can sometimes be a problem. And there's just different things like that where they're being designed for a hammock. They might not always be ideal for the ground. So before we jump into the tips and tricks of this, I just want you to understand that there are some key things you want to look for when purchasing a top quilt that we're going to cover at the end of this video. All right, so let's jump into the tips and tricks. And before we even get to the top quilt usage aspect, we need to talk about something super important, which is the sleeping pad you're putting the top quilt on. Now, anytime that we hear about someone feeling like their bag or their top quilt isn't that warm, we always ask them what their sleeping pad R value is, because that is a huge factor, and especially in top quilts because you're laying directly on your pad without any potential insulation underneath you. So make sure you have an appropriately rated pad. If not, go a little bit extra on the R value to make sure you stay warm in that top quilt. So tip number 2 is use your pad straps. Now most top quilts are gonna come with pad straps or have the ability for you to attach them to your pad. Make sure you use them. The big advantage here is that it's going to help seal that down around you and hold it in place as you turn throughout the night. But there is kind of a pro tip here. I do see a lot of people attach these to their pads on the far edges, so it does hold the quilt down. However, if you want to seal in more warmth, adjust these so that they're basically underneath you, so it pulls that quilt down and underneath you to help keep those drafts out as you're rolling around at night. Number 3 is be conscious of drafts. If you roll over in the night and you're totally oblivious to that aspect and you start to get that cold air in, well, once you finally realize it and retuck your quilt, you're gonna be colder. And when you are colder, you have to use body energy and whatnot to reheat up. If you preemptively make sure that you're keeping that top quilt sealed around you, or just being a little bit more conscious when you roll over in the night, you're going to be able to keep that heat in and stay warmer throughout the entire night. This is especially true when you're going out in the colder months, because if it's 0 degrees out and you get a draft and you don't notice it and your whole body cools off, it's gonna be that much harder to reheat. Now this one's a critical piece because on top quilts we eliminate the hoods like on other sleeping bags. You do need to make sure your head is staying warm. Your head can lose a ton of heat, so make sure you're taking care of it. Some people use beanies, or this is a little sneak peek of something that we will have out very, very shortly. You can use balaclavas, and another sneak peek, I guess. You can use booties if you've got cold feet, but particularly with top quilts, make sure that you're using a beanie, a balaclava, or something to keep your head warm, because if you're not, you will absolutely feel it and be cold in your top quilt. So those are the tips we're gonna cover in this, and they should help you with some of these fears you have of drafts and being cold. However, there's more to the story, and as promised, we're gonna dive into that right now. Things that you need to consider when you go to buy a brand new top quilt. It's top of mind for me because we just finished up a design on our brand new refreshed top quilt. So I'm actually gonna take you through our thought process, my thought process, as we went through designing this piece, and make sure that you're aware of those things when you go to make your next purchase. For starters, let's talk about foot boxes. There's a lot of top quilts out there that have a zipper or they can fully open, and while they sound cool in theory, the bottom line is they're not gonna be as warm. That's a cold spot, that zipper is gonna be a cold spot, or where it cinches down here will not be as warm. So having a fully boxed, baffled foot box is gonna keep your feet warmer on the trail. And with ours, we also wanted to optimize this because again, weight is so important, to map your feet. So if you were to picture laying on your back right here, oftentimes your heels will be together and your toes will start to splay out, which is exactly how this foot box should appear. It's a little bit tapered as we go up, optimizing The space, so my advice is when you go to buy a top quilt, buy the boxed foot baffle. It's gonna keep your feet warmer on the trail. So if you look at these two top quilts on the wall behind me, the red one is our model from before, and the green one over here is our new and updated model. You can see on this red one that it's basically a straight line. It's tapered, but it's a straight line all the way to the top. So it's kind of funny because the widest point on the whole bag is literally the part that is around your neck area. It doesn't really make sense. So on this newer model, we have added more curve to it. It's gonna be wide as it can be from your shoulders down to your hips. And with that, just a pro tip here, make sure that when you are shopping for a top quilt, you're looking for something that's at least 55 inches wide. That's kind of standard. But this one is actually gonna be wider than that in those areas. And then you'll see that it starts to taper around the shoulders back towards the neck. Now that's gonna shave a little bit of weight and allow us to make it wider in that midsection, but also it helps seal it around your neck. So when you go to make a top quilt purchase, getting something that has some curve in it is going to be critical to help it, one, stay underneath you, and two, make it a little bit easier to seal around your neck and not have so much extra fabric at the top. Something that can really add to your experience with a top quilt is a draft collar. You see, like on this red one behind me here, if you're to cinch that all the way down, you basically have to take that drawstring almost to your neck to seal it up. Whereas on this newer model or something with a draft collar, you can cinch this up and not have to have it so tight against your neck, and still fully going to seal. Now, also something to note with draft collars is some of them, the way that they are designed is a sew-through design right here, whereas ours is going to be a box design, so there's no cold spot around that drawstring whatsoever, keeping you sealed and comfortable. So when you're looking for a top quilt, something with that draft collar will pay dividends to keep you warm. We covered this a little bit earlier, but wanted to retouch on this. Make sure that when you get a top quilt, you get something that has the ability to put 2 pad straps on it, or the ability for you to order the pad straps after. Those pad straps are gonna help you stay warm for sure and help that seal around you. The last thing that you should really consider with a top quilt is the temperature rating. You're gonna wanna look at reviews and what other people think of the temperature ratings, because there's no certified test for top quilts to know if the rating that the company is giving is accurate or not. So look at those reviews. I'll have you know that with our newer design top quilt, we did add a few more ounces of down, and with its ability to seal and some other updates that we did, it is drastically warmer. So just pay attention to things like that. Pay attention when companies are updating them. Look at their reviews and see where people are saying the comfort zone is on that top quilt. Hopefully this video was super insightful for you and maybe motivates you to try out a top quilt for your first time. I know that I use top quilts, and everyone in the office really now is using top quilts for those extra weight savings, pack size savings. We've got some massive trips planned this summer that we're super excited about, and a top quilt is definitely in all of our gear bags at this point for those savings. So hopefully you learned something in this video that inspires you to try a top quilt, or know maybe why you haven't been super warm. So if you're interested in checking out our newly designed top quilt, jump over to our website, because if you buy one in the next 7 days from the launch of this video, we're actually gonna throw in a brand new no-sew patch. This is a gear patch that can fix about anything you've got in your backpack, and that'll just come for free when you buy your top quilt. So go check it out on our website, learn a little bit more about top quilts, and we'll see you on the next video.